Morning, all. All right, so we had one game last night. We got 11 tonight. So we went 10 games on Saturday, 10 games on Sunday, one game on Monday, 11 games tonight. As things really are quite busy for every team in the league. And we're going to see how this affects teams down the stretch, which ones deal well with playing all these games and which ones don't. So we'll start at 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific. We have four games starting at that time of night. Starting with Dallas in against Toronto. The Dallas Stars 32-22-3 overall. Their last 10 games they're 6-3-1. Away from home they're 12-14-2. They've got to even up that record. They're 5 points behind both Nashville and Minnesota, so it's unlikely they end up at least third in the division. It's possible they end up at a wild card spot because they're only 1 point behind Vegas and Edmonton. They are 2 points ahead of Vancouver as well. The Toronto Maple Leafs 37-17-5 is their overall record over their last 10 games. They're 5-3-2. They lost that last game, the outdoor game against Buffalo. At home they're 27-2. They're 7 points behind Florida, 3 points behind Tampa, and 2 points ahead of Boston. So they do have to worry about falling into a wild card spot. This is the first of two meetings. They'll meet again in Dallas on April 7th. Also at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, the Arizona Coyotes in against the Montreal Canadiens. Arizona won this game on January 17th by a score of 5-2. Arizona's 19-36-4. And not only that, they're 7-3 over their last 10. They've won their last game. Away from home, they're 10-16-3. They are 10 points behind Chicago. They are tied with Seattle at the bottom of the West. On the Montreal front, they're 16-35-8 overall. Last 10 games, they're 7-2-1. Almost the same record as Arizona. They won their last game as well. At home, they're 8-17-2. They're 7 points behind Ottawa and Philadelphia. So both teams are playing pretty well. This might end up being a more entertaining game than it has any right to be when you look at where they are in the standings. 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific start time between Anaheim and the New York Rangers. For the Ducks, they're 27-25-10. The Rangers did go in and beat them, however, on January 8th, 4-1. So for the Ducks, they're trying to even up the season series and stay in the hunt for a playoff spot. And this is while they've traded off Josh Manson and made it clear with that move that, we are in a sell-off mode for them. They're 3-6-1 in their last 10. They lost their last game. Away from home, they are 11-14-6. They're 4 points behind both Vegas and Edmonton. They are tied with Winnipeg in the standings currently, Winnipeg having 2 games in hand. On the New York Rangers side of things, they're 37-17-5. Over their last 10 games, they're 6-4. They won their last game. At home, they're 19-5-3. They're 8 points behind Carolina, 2 points behind Pittsburgh, and 5 points ahead of Washington. So for the Rangers, trying to keep pace with Pittsburgh, trying to reel in Carolina and get further ahead of Washington. That's the plan. 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, we will see the second meeting between the Islanders and the Capitals. The first one was won by Washington on January 15th by a score of 2-0. I don't expect a high-scoring game between these two tonight, but it is always unpredictable as to how many goals are going to be scored in a game. The Islanders are 24-24-8. Yep, they're back to 500. They're 5-4-1 in their last 10, but they've won 3 in a row coming into this one. Away from home, they're 10-12-4. They're 7 points behind Columbus. They're 1 point ahead of Detroit. On the Washington side, they're 32-18-10 over their last 10 games. They're 6-3-1. They won their last game. At home, they're 14-11-5. They are 3 points behind Boston for that number one wildcard spot, and 5 points behind the Rangers for the third spot in their division. This is the second of 4 meetings. These teams meet again on April 26th and April 28th, so finishing out the season against one another. 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific start time for the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Nashville Predators. This is the first of 2 meetings, this, of course, being a rematch of the 2017 Stanley Cup Final. The Pittsburgh Penguins, 36-15-9 overall. Their last 10 games, they're 5-4-1. They've won 2 in a row. Away from home, they're 19-6-4. They're 6 points behind Carolina. They're 2 points ahead of the New York Rangers. On the Nashville side, 34-21-4 is their overall record. Last 10 games, they're 6-4. They did win their last game. At home, they're 17-11-0, so decent home record. They're tied with Minnesota. They're 4 points ahead of Vegas, who are, of course, the number 2 wild card, Nashville being the number 1 wild card currently. And so this one should be a lot of fun. This is the first of 2 meetings. They meet again April 10th in Pittsburgh. Also at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, the Vegas Golden Knights and Winnipeg Jets meet for the second time. On January 2nd, the first meeting, a 5-4 overtime win for the Winnipeg Jets. Vegas is now 32-25-4 overall. Their last 10 games, they're 3-7. They've lost 4 in a row in regulation. Away from home, they're 16-12-1. They're tied with Edmonton for that third place in the division / second wildcard spot. They're 1 point ahead of Dallas and 3 points ahead of the Vancouver Canucks. So it is a perilous position that Vegas finds themselves in all of a sudden. Winnipeg 27-10-3, or 27-10-3. No, that's not it. 27-23-10. My brain will wake up. Last 10 games, 5-3-2. They won their last game. At home, they're 15-11-2. So they're better at home than they are on the road. They're 4 points behind Edmonton / Vegas for that final playoff spot. So they're within shouting distance. And if they win this one in regulation, and if other teams lose and give them some room, they could be as close as 2 points back. They're also 5 points ahead of San Jose, and they're tied with Anaheim. So this one will be fun, and the third meeting will be March 22nd. 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific start time between the Boston Bruins and the Chicago Blackhawks. These teams met in Boston on March 10th. Boston won that matchup 4-3. For the Bruins, they're 36-18-5. Last 10 games, they're 8-1-1. They've won 2 in a row. Away from home, they're 18-8-3. They're 2 points behind Toronto. They're 3 points ahead of Washington for that first wild card spot. The Chicago Blackhawks, on the other hand, way out of it, but 22-30-8. And if you take them lightly, they've still got Patrick Kane. They've got DeBrincat. They've got Hagel. They've got good players. They're 4-5-1 over their last 10, but they did win their last game. At home, they're 11-15-4. They're 7 points behind San Jose, 10 points ahead of both Arizona and Seattle. So 9 Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific, we will see the Detroit Red Wings and the Edmonton Oilers meet up. These teams met November 9th in Detroit. The Wings won that one 4-2. The Wings are 24-28-7. Feels like that's the worst record they've had this year. And their last 10 tell you why. They are 2-7-1 in their last 10. They did lose their last game. Away from home, they're 8-16-3, so that's a big part of the problem as well. They're 1 point behind the Islanders. They're 6 points ahead of New Jersey and 7 points ahead of Buffalo. So they're pretty solidly in the spot that they're in. They might move past the Islanders, and that's about it. But even moving past the Islanders here with a 500 record, Detroit, not so much. They've got to win some games to get there. The Oilers, 32-23-4 overall. Last 10 games, they're also 4-5-1, which is the same record Chicago has right above them. But, of course, they've won 2 in a row. And it's funny with them because Edmonton always feels like it's feast or famine, like they're doing really well, everything's great, and then it just all falls off the rails. There doesn't seem to be an in-between. Or at home, they're 16-12 overall. They're 6 points behind LA, tied with Vegas for that third spot in the division or second wild card, and 1 point ahead of Dallas. That's your playoff line. So again, Edmonton's not in a comfortable position, but I still feel like at the end, they are highly likely to be in the playoffs. I'd be kind of surprised if they weren't. 10 Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. When we get into the late games, we start with New Jersey coming in against Vancouver. The Devils made it look easy last time. Or Halak made it look easy. Depends on your point of view. The New Jersey Devils won 7-2 at home on February 28th. That was a game that Vancouver needed. Think of it this way. If Vancouver had won that game, they would currently be 1 point outside of a playoff spot. They are not. So the New Jersey Devils, trying to play spoiler again, they're 22-32-5 over their last 10 games. They're 5-5. They did win their last game. Away from home, they're 8-18-2, so their road record is not good. They're 6 points behind Detroit, 1 point ahead of Buffalo, 2 points ahead of both Ottawa and Philadelphia. Vancouver, on the other hand, 29-24-7 over their last 10 games. They're 6-3-1. They lost their last game against Tampa. They have to start on time. It's frustrating that this team has got itself back in the hunt, and 2 games in a row they didn't start on time. So at home they're 13-11-4. They're 3 points behind both Vegas and Edmonton, 2 points behind Dallas, and 1 point ahead of Winnipeg and Anaheim. So it is an absolute tangled mess in the West. For Vancouver to get in, they're going to need some help because they don't have games in hand on anybody they're chasing, and they're going to need to get some wins going here. So we'll see how that goes. 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific start time between Colorado and the LA Kings. These teams met January 20th. Colorado wins that meeting 4-1. Colorado is 42-13-5. I'm in trouble with numbers today. 42-13-5. Last 10 games, they're 6-3-1. They won their last game away from home. They're 18-10-2. They're 13 points ahead of St. Louis. So not likely that they fall out of first place in that division. On the LA side, they're 33-20-8 overall. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10. They won their last game against Florida. A minor miracle, considering that most of the guys who scored seem to be out of the minors. At home, 15-12-3 is their record. They're 5 points behind Calgary for first in the division. They're 6 points ahead of both Edmonton and Vegas. So really, just a decent stretch from here, and they should be able to get themselves home ice in that first round. They should be second in the division, and who knows? Anything's possible. You got to think they'd go with Jonathan Quick as their starter. Anything's possible with Quick. Also at 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific, the Florida Panthers in against the San Jose Sharks. January 29th, Florida wins this meeting at home in overtime, 5-4. So for Florida, they're now 40-13-6 over their last 10 games. 6-3-1 is their record. They lost in extra time against LA last time out. Away from home, they're 14-7-6. They're 4 points ahead of Tampa. They're 7 points ahead of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So they can extend their lead atop the division to 6 points with a win tonight. On the San Jose side, they're 26-25-7. Last 10 games, they're 4-4-2. They have won 2 in a row, both over LA. At home, they're 14-13-3. They're 9 points behind both Vegas and Edmonton for the playoffs. They are 7 points ahead of Chicago. So they're closer to Chicago beneath them than they are to the playoff teams above them. But at this point, San Jose is playing spoiler. And again, when you're dealing with teams that are outside of a playoff position, these are guys playing for their jobs next year, or well aware that there's a trade deadline coming up and they might be on the move. So you want to impress when you know that other people are taking an interest in your services. And so we'll see how things go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always, including your winners for tonight's games. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.